My dear fellow Europeans, as I sit here in my new studio, I thought I should write to you at the end of this tumultuous year to let you know that whilst many Britons feel jaded, fearful and weary, they still hold on to the hope that one day the madness that surrounds them will be gone. I suspect that many of my fellow citizens are deeply embarrassed by their government and their failures, not just on Brexit, but also in the way that they govern their day-to-day lives, evident now in the handling of the coronavirus crisis. I also know that my fellow European citizens, because I have always held dual citizenship, are weary of the British government but hold a deep regard and understanding for the many British people who are suffering. The despair of my fellow British citizens is clear each day through their cathartic and deeply personal accounts of their depression, anger and frustration. Lives have been upended, families split, and the mental health crisis that will surely follow will infect dialogue and the nation's health in the years to come. But the politicians that now occupy the levers of power, drunk on their own self-belief, have offered their land of hope and glory rhetoric in this, the final days and hours of the nation's connection to Europe. Once that momentous event is upon us, then the big idea to lift the nation's mood comes in the form of the festival of Brexit. Yes, the nation is to be treated to a festival like no other, where flag-waving true believers will be able to bathe in the warm glow of their undoubted beliefs. I don't criticise their beliefs, as they appear to be genuinely held, but such a festival will, in my view, also give oxygen to the racist, misogynist and extreme opinion holders who have become even more visible, giving rise to general angst and fear amongst many British citizens. The sage wits of the social networks have already declared that the festival of Brexit is now in full flow, evidenced by the lorries and trucks that have been siphoned off from their route to Dover and onward into mainland Europe. Isn't it ironic that Britain is only beginning to realise that its desire for freedom and sovereignty is actually reliant on interdependence? Whereas, as members of the European Union, the UK could have happily received help and assistance from their neighbours, the country is now dependent upon the harsh reality that these same neighbours now dictate how trucks will flow, and indeed how a future relationship will be delivered. The triumph of rising trade deals can only be seen through the prism of desperation and a lack of imagination. It is an imagination that can only for the present copy and paste current EU trade deals with third-party countries in order to deliver the continuity that may avert complete disaster. Many Britons look toward the political process to deliver them from this mire, hoping in vain that Her Majesty's opposition will bring order to chaos. But it is party politics that has gotten their country into this mess. Their obsession with not wanting to offend those that voted to leave has paralysed logical thought to the point that it is evident that only narrow party political interests guide them. Other parties eye the opportunity for the future and the lure of independence. And who could perhaps blame them when their voices are ignored? Others present a progressive veneer, but scratch that surface and there exists an attraction, an addiction to their own hard historical policies and instincts of the past that always disappoints. So whilst the UK Parliament suffers from a collective cerebral COVID, vast swathes of the country, views and opinions are simply ignored. We are left with a shell of political inclusivity and consensus, apparently as a byproduct of democracy, but dominated and supported by nepotism and corruption on a scale never seen before in this country. I have even seen people on the social networks calling on Her Majesty the Queen to intervene and invoke her powers to dissolve the government. Then there are those who bring in their own points of view that such actions by the Queen will not likely happen because the royal family have a strong instinct towards self-preservation. What surprised me, however, is the strong feeling I have seen expressed, by many, that they will break with their family traditions and not watch the institution that is the Queen's speech on Christmas Day. If this proves to be correct, it will represent a seismic shift in the culture of the British Christmas, where for generations Britons were glued to their radios or television sets to listen to the clipped tones of a woman who for many decades was seen as the mother of the nation. This is a critical moment for the UK because if this very institution is viewed with disdain or as an irrelevance to ordinary citizens' lives, then the constitutional implications will be a wake-up call for every political party that have brought us to the point of catastrophe, both in sickness and in health. I have long held the view that the country has taken decades to reach this point, achieved through political indifference towards the European Union, a discontent funded by external parties, and manipulated by structures that fed into ill-informed fears and prejudices. It is no longer of any consequence to me whether someone voted to leave or remain. The full Brexit is now upon us, and it must have its day in the sun. But like all projects of absolutes, it will fail. It will rise and fall on the back of small initiatives. It will rise and fall when citizens finally realise that the problem rests within the political structures they believed would do right by them. It will rise and fall when ordinary people realise what they have lost and what they took for granted. The UK will seethe and fracture, and the intellectual and emotional deficit found in our current crop of UK politicians will be unable and incapable of repairing the wounds of the nation. In the end, change will come from the ground up. It will be ordinary people who will clamour for change. That movement will in the end deliver awareness and reality to the political class that they too need to change. The change from the people will be slow but determined, no longer cowed by labels of insult, but emboldened by logic and reason. That will be the revolution, a revolution that will one day bring the UK, however that may exist in the future, back into the heart of Europe, and with it, a fresh experience that will bind us even closer together, whilst recognising each European's own distinctiveness. Until that day, and for the present, I wish you all a Merry Christmas or a happy holiday season and a safe and happy New Year. Until the next time, take care.